Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking about niching. The riches are in the niches, right? I don't know. We're going to find out together. I have an awesome guest with me. We're going to talk about actually how to niche down, not just the theory of it, but hear his exercise that he's gone through, is currently going through, and hopefully you could take something from that for your own business. Kevin Jans, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So we were talking before the show, and there's like 7 topics that you could talk about. So if you're listening, probably won't be the first or the last time you're hearing Kevin, but we're talking about niching today, which is, I think, an over talked about topic. But the way you talk about it is going to be different because you have experience of it. You actually do it to a degree where it's successful. So why don't you take me back to before you started niching? Walk me through what was life in your business trying to please everybody and effectively please nobody.
Yeah, it's a frustrating exercise to think you can help everybody and have so many people either ghost you or worse, hire you, but then you can't actually help them as well, or run into a situation where they want more help than you have to give, all because you're not targeting the right people. So our niche is we focus on helping government contractors navigate how government contracts work, as well as helping government folks understand how contractors think. Why is that a niche, or why is that our niche? Is because I was a contracting officer for the government. That's what I started this business like 13 years ago. And in the early days, if I'll zoom out and think, oh, anybody can have a government contract. Okay, that's somewhat true. I can get into the nuances of why it's not. But by that logic, any business I can sell to. It's easy to say, in fact, when you've been a contracting officer and people recognize what that is, you'll have a lot of people say, oh, can I pick your brain? You can help us with blank. And whether it's winning the contract, administering it afterwards, figuring out how the contracts are awarded, all the rules around them, et cetera, it's a lot to throw out to the world. And so I thought I could help everybody. And so I spent a lot of time talking to people that there wasn't any commonality between them, talking to large companies, small companies, service companies, ones that provided a product, ones that were developing a product, ones that did research and development, all over the map. And while it was flattering to have, hey, we can talk to lots of people, it never went anywhere. And the point of running a business is to actually have impact in the universe, right? And you can't do that if you're not actually closing any deals. And you're not closing any deals if your message isn't particularly clear. And what I figured out that was helping you, that's not a clear message. It's like, what do I do with that? Right? That's like homework for the customer to figure out, what do you mean by that, right? Whereas if you can niche it down to, who do we actually help? And I'll give some credit here. There's a book called I think it was Sell More Faster. It's a really underwhelming title, but the basic premise, and the guy's got a really long name, but if you Google it, you'll find it. But the idea was the 3 W's: who buys from you, what are they buying, why are they buying? And that third one hit me. What do they call that? That interocular data hits you right between the eyes. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know that. That was a big part of it. So we're talking like 10 years ago. I figured out maybe I should know, okay, I can tell who's buying from us. I can tell what they're buying. They're buying training and consulting. But why are they buying? So that's the first step in the niching process, is that if they're buying because they're curious, if they're buying because they have a budget, those are terrible reasons, right? The real reason is, what problem are you solving for them? And so that's like, I guess, step 2 for me of niching is, and that's where we struggle with now, is the problem we solve for people is they want to understand government contracting from both sides. If you don't care about that, you are not a prospect for us. It's just that simple. And if you don't know enough about contracting to know why you would want to know about both sides, you're not a prospect for us. But that's the problem that we solve. And owning that. So when somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business selling, let's pick a thing, water bottles to the government. That's a person that doesn't necessarily care about how the other side buys from them. Now, there are people to help them. There are lots of free resources to help them. I can send them to other folks, but that's not what we specialize in. What we specialize is, if you want to understand, I've been selling this to the government for a long time. I'm only winning like 10% of my contracts. Why is that? That's somebody we help because they have the problem we solve. They want to understand the other side. Or for our government clients, they want to understand, why is the contractor doing this? Why are they protesting this? Why is their Congress member calling me because they didn't win? Why aren't they bidding on this? Why do they think they should get paid more for this? Those are all questions they want to get answered. And so that's why they're buying. So go back to that basic concept of figure out what problem that you solve. And then once you know what problem you solve, only talk to people whom you can actually solve that problem for. And that's where the discipline comes in, because as recent as this morning, I had somebody on LinkedIn send me a message about, hey, can you come speak on our webinar? What's your webinar about? They just want my face there. And as arrogant and flattering as that sounds, it's like, it's not going to help anybody. But like when we started talking about me being on here, we talked about niching. We talked about, like, this is what I do. I help people. One of the things I do is help people understand how to target better. That's we have entire podcast episodes about how to target in the government. We could do a whole different episode. That'll be one of the future ones about how to target in the government. But one of the most valuable things about being in the government space is that so much of the dollars that are spent are public. It's public information. So you can see who's actually buying from you. You can answer that first question: who's buying from me? And you can see what they're buying. Are they buying professional services? Are they buying products? What are they buying? But you still have to figure out, why are they buying from companies like me? So I've been talking a while. I'll take a breath. That's my first salvo of this concept.
No, that's all great. And for anybody listening or watching and who had that immediate thought about Doge, I promise, I've already talked to Kevin about it. He's going to come back, do a second episode. That's a whole episode in itself. So we'll get there, but not today. So keep listening. But it's funny you say this, because I always feel like this podcast is a self-help podcast for me. Like we had a marketing meeting last week, and we're talking about running a new Facebook ad for our company. Testing wording for a new product we're launching. And I posed the question about what you're saying. Like, why would people buy this? Like, what's the problem we're solving? Silence for 30 seconds. And it's the hardest thing to answer, right? It's like, why do people buy this product? Well, I don't really know. I never thought about that. I just built the product.
Yeah, what's the Zig Ziglar quote is, people don't buy a drill because they want a drill. They buy a drill because they need to have a 1/4-inch hole.
Yeah,
because it'll get them there. And having that concept of, like, what problem do we solve? And it is a hard drill, like, no pun intended. It's a hard exercise to go through to come up with that, because we often go back to, well, they're buying our podcast, they're buying our training. Those are things. What's the problem that's solved for them? And it may be different for different segments. We actually have 3 different segments. We have government clients, we have contractor clients, and then I also do expert witness work for lawyers for unique government contracting cases. They want 3 different things specifically, but the problem I'm solving for all of them is the same. I want to know what the other side is thinking. And I'm not a savant. I beat my head against the wall for like years to figure this out. But that's what I wanted to share. It's like, once you figure out what problem you're solving, and you realize if you're solving the same problem for all of your customers, that's gold, because now it's so much easier to filter. Because you could flat out ask them, well, this is the problem. You can even, I often word it like, people come to us because they need to know what the other side is thinking. Do you have that problem? And if they immediately say, oh no, I've already talked to the contracting officer, they know that they're not a prospect. They're not a fit for us. And while we may have other tools that they may be able to use, functionally speaking, they are not going to value us as much as somebody that says, yes, that's the problem I have.
Yeah. I mean, based on that value prop, I hate to do this to you, but I think you have a 4th niche, and that is men who have been married for more than 3 years. They really need to know what the other side is thinking.
Well, I've been married for coming up on 25. So yeah, I can't, I don't say that next to it. That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. Oh man, totally different show, totally different audience. I love it. No, but let's dive in here, because I think this is, while it's a painful exercise and people don't want to go through it, it is insanely valuable to understand who you're selling to and what the other side is thinking. So walk me through you said you're doing this in real time in your business because of the government shakeup. So what are you doing to go through this process and really understand who your target client is and how to get through to them?
So the first thing to do is document what your three W's are. Who's buying from us? What are they buying? Why are they buying? And then go back and visit that. And that's the discipline part. So in our space, government contracting, and like you said, this episode we're doing now is more to be evergreen. Like these concepts will always apply. That's why we don't want to get down to Doge and what's going on in the government contracting right now, because that's not evergreen. But once you understand those three W's and you document them, and then you can go back and visit and say, okay, what's changed? And that's an important question to ask when you're doing targeting. So once a quarter, ask yourself what's changed. And what's that zoom out and see if you can figure out something changed in your organization. Do you have a new skill set because of new team members you brought on? I brought on a director of operations, Caesar. He's a retired Marine Corps contracting officer. Dude's a rock star. So we have a lot more capability because Caesar is on the team now. That's changed internally. Also, what's changed externally? Well, all the Doge stuff, all the shakeup, the snow globe that's being shaken in government contracting right now. Eventually, the snow will settle and we'll be able to see clearly. But in the meantime, what's changed? And so go back to the three W's. What are they buying? Why are they buying? And the idea here is, why are they buying from us? Has that changed? That's the targeting exercise that works the most for us. Because if I look at it, okay, they bought 6 months ago. People were buying our training because the new fiscal year had kicked in, which the fiscal year for the government starts in October. And so they're planning for next year. They were preparing for a couple of big projects. They were wondering what was going to happen with the election. We were helping them to prepare for requests for proposal and big projects that were coming up. That's what was happening 6 months ago. Now it's the other end of the spectrum, where government is being reorganized. A lot of programs are being cut. A lot of programs are just being paused, because the assessment I'm taking right now is that they're basically trying to level set everything. They say, okay, let's get everything to zero, see what we miss. So you may have a totally viable contract for cybersecurity, for training government employees on cybersecurity. Or how about this? One of our contractors, they fly the planes that drop fire retardant on fires all over the country. That contract's not going away, but they're pausing to go, okay, was this the best way to manage it? So there's an example of what's changed. What's changed for our clients and the clients who come to us is they're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on right now? So things like a stop work order, a termination for convenience. Nobody was thinking about that 6 months ago. So now when somebody comes to me and says, I want to understand why the government would terminate my contract for convenience, listen to that question and you recognize they want to know what the other side is thinking. There's that basic I go back to that, as opposed to they come to me and say, why is the government doing this? I have no idea. I'm not a politician. I'm not going to that's not my specialty. My job is to be able to say, okay, based on what is happening, what can we do? Can we actually help you? Do you have the problem that we solve? And so we're going through that exact exercise now. Because when you do something for 13 years and you have, 510 podcast episodes, and I've written a book. I mean, people are coming to me because I'm just known in this space of government contracting. But if they don't have the problem that we solve, I'm not going to be able to help them as much, or worse, they think I can help them out and I can't. Like, for example, their contract may have gotten terminated because it expired and they didn't compete for the next round of it. And they blame what's going on, and this actually happened. And they're blaming what's going on in the space. I'm like, no, the government terminated your contract before the administration changed. It's like they didn't have an interest in what you have. That's a different problem. It's got nothing to do with the politics. You're putting that blame on there. And that led to a really weird conversation on the phone that I'm like, we're not a good fit because we're talking about different things here. But they didn't want to solve the problem that we had. So that's the biggest thing about targeting that works for us, is you got to find that what problem do you solve, and you got to keep going back to it. And as an entrepreneur I'm the classic shiny object entrepreneur. I'm like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. It's very easy to see the next thing, and this will ground you. That's why I'm a huge fan of visit this every 3 months, keep asking that question, put it in front of the team constantly of once you figure out what problem you solve, keep going back to it. And then what it will help you do, other than the stuff I talked about here, It'll help you basically help you be the person for solving that problem over time. And it'll keep you from solving problems that you're not really the best at. And from a sales perspective, our close ratio is between 25 and 35%. Of anybody who comes to our website, about 20% of them close. Wow. If we talk to them and say, well, here's how we actually could solve the problem for you, it's closer to 30. It's about 1 out of 3. For my research, that's hugely high.
Yeah. No, that's a big deal.
And I go back to I'm not a savant. It's the targeting. It's the process. It's the people that come to our website. I mean, if you go to our website, right on the homepage, it says, do GovCon well. If you don't want to do GovCon well, you are off. It's like if you're just here to win a contract, you don't actually want to do it well. And I can talk about why it's important to do it well, because the government can be an evergreen customer if you do it right. And so that idea of doing it well hits people. And so that's the problem we solve. We want people to do, our mission is to bring context to both sides of GovCon so we all do GovCon well. That's the message, right? If that message doesn't resonate with you, you're not going to come to us. That's how far targeting can go, into like the words you use. You want people to hear, because you go back 5-6 years, I think our tagline was learn, win, and grow in government contracting. Everybody wants that. So I got all kinds of unrelated, unqualified leads, all kinds of conversations that didn't go anywhere because it was too nebulous. And I learned by doing. I learned how painful it is to get, what's that saying that, we have 1,000 leads. Oh no, we have 1,000 leads to go.
Yeah, exactly. It's double-edged sword, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And we all learn by doing. Hopefully we learn by other people's mistakes too, which is what you're here sharing. The last question before I'll let you go here is with this why piece. I think it's interesting. You touched on it, where in October they're buying for one reason. Their why is completely different than what it is now. And you say you revisit this every 3 months. How do you keep a pulse on that in real time? Because those are that's probably as dramatic as you're going to get in a 6-month window, the two that you shared. Most small business owners are not going to have that type of thing. But what we do have is the reality of the situation, where there's probably some fear, anger, emotions involved, and you need to stay level-headed and laser focused. How do you do that in real time to identify, okay, what is the real why without my stories and my BS attached to it, so that I can clearly cut through the noise and attract my ideal client?
So I would say that is still going to be true every 3 months, regardless of what you sell. What just popped in my head? Let's say you sell pools and you think we're coming into a pretty significant recession, or you think that the tariffs are going to cause the cost of some of the equipment go up. Therefore, the person who's, hey, I'd like a pool someday, is not going to be the person that you necessarily be reaching out to. So just like in government contracting, in the real world, things may change pretty quickly. Oftentimes they don't. But you don't know unless you ask every 3 months, unless you ask that question of, has anything changed that would change why they're buying from us? And so somebody who's buying a pool, like the reason I pick on that example, I live in Florida, right? And during 2008 to 2012, which is the economy was just recovering from the Great Recession, right? A record number of pools were built here in Florida. Why is that? Well, again, I'm not a savant. I just done some research on it. One, because the interest rates were really low. Two, because a lot of people, they're like, okay, I'm going to come out of this. We're going to be okay. I want to increase the value of my house. And this is a way to do that. And then three, some of the answers were, I've been putting this off for 20 years. It's time. If I wait for the perfect time, I'll never do it. That reason, I've been putting this off for 20 years, and if I don't do it now, I may never do it. That's not going to apply everywhere, but it may apply at different times. And again, I'm picking up a pool installer. Put that on your business, whatever it is. Every 3 months, look at what's going on in your industry. And frankly, if you're not paying attention closely enough in your industry, that's a different problem. But you should be able to say, okay, this is what's changing. Like, how about this? During tax season, during January to March, as an accountant, people are coming to you for a different reason than they do in October. So just be aware of some of them are annual patterns. Some of them are based on the economies. If you're a mortgage broker, it's interest rates. There's some indicator of what it is. For us, it's what's going on in the government. And there are times that even though the average citizen, that sounds mean, the person who's not in government contracting doesn't feel like some of the nuances that have come on, like how the Patriot Act back in 2001 actually impacted government contracting, and how sequestration, how government shutdowns, you may know about them in the news, but you didn't realize how they impact. Well, you don't care. They're not your thing. So think, what are the things that are your thing? And that's the importance of focusing every 3 months, because you can say, well, what's changed? And you can think about from your, what's the other, I'll give you another one. Like the reverse lens is what I've heard this referred to as before. Look at it from the other side, and in what ways would they be right? If you look at it from the other side and go, okay, they think that we're not paying attention to them as a customer in October because we're an accounting firm. In what ways would they be right? We're not, because that's not accounting firms make their money in the first 4 months of the year, and then they try not to lose it the rest of the year. Same idea, right? So think about what ways can you look at it from your customer's point of view, but you can't do that if you haven't started with what problem do we solve? You're revisiting it. What's changed? You have to walk through that process. And so that has worked exceptionally well for us, and it makes our marketing better. You can hear the confidence in my voice. Like, I've screwed this up so many times, and now I feel confident. And even though we're going through a little bit of a weird dip because of what's going on in the government space, I know long-term that our clients will be fine because we solve the problem that they have, and we'll keep doing that.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And it's the consistency, I think, that really helps. It's not set it and forget it and think your customer and never check in with them. That's really what I'm pulling from this episode, is have your thumb on the pulse, so to speak, so you don't get caught in the snow globe in your industry whenever that may happen. So, Kevin, this is awesome. By the time this episode comes out, I believe the Doge contract will be expiring soon. So let's do that other episode in the very near future. We'll have you back. Where should the listeners go in the meantime to learn more about you and see this in real time, see it in action?
Well, we are named after the Skyway Bridge, which goes across Tampa Bay down in Tampa, Florida. So Skyway ACQ, it's Skyway Acquisition is the name of the company. And then honestly, I'm on LinkedIn. You just Google us. You'll find all kinds of videos and content I've put out. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're here to help people do government contracting well. And it doesn't sound like a niche because there's a lot of government contracts out there, but within it, it's a huge opportunity to niche. And the last thing I'll say about the importance of knowing your customer, you can't do that if you don't niche. It's really, really hard to be like Google and Apple, who has customers everywhere. Okay, those are like 1,000th of 1%. Most businesses, if you have customers that do all kinds of different things that aren't related, it's really hard to engage with them because they care about completely different things. So if you help your team to fine tune, this is who we help, it's easier to watch them. It's easier to keep track of who they are when they're in a smaller niche. So yeah, I've become, in fact, I even did a TED talk called Why the Micro Niche is Mighty, because that was 10 years ago. It was a while ago. But the idea hasn't changed, is that keep focusing on the niche you can serve the best, and just business is just much more fun that way.
Yeah, this is awesome. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming wherever you're watching or listening, all that stuff and more down in the show notes below. So be sure to check that out. Kevin, let's do this again soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Harmonious at Lunch podcast. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and we want to invite you to join us in the Small Business Success Facebook group, our private group where guests and listeners come together to grow your business. We want impact-driven entrepreneurs who are ready to go to the next level in this group so we can all share ideas, collaborate, and grow our businesses together. Go to whatif.com/group, and we want to invite you to join today. See you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch.